G'day everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I want to talk to you about why you shouldn't walk with your feet turned out, and then give you a quick exercise that will hopefully help you restore some of that normal motion to the area really quickly. So I think the first thing that we need to talk about is most people who tend to walk with their feet turned out don't do it intentionally. It's an adaptive process that happens over time based on a number of different things, but one of which is tightness at the front of the hip. So when we spend a lot of time sitting at a desk all day, the front of that hip becomes quite tight, or it has the capacity to become really tight on a lot of people. And what that means when we're walking is that instead of being able to keep our feet straight and let a leg trail behind us, again with that foot straight, we often see that this being tight, our body has to rotate around that tightness to keep going. So when we're walking, instead of being feet straight and letting that foot trail behind us in a linear way, our body has to rotate around that hip tightness because it can't extend any further, and that foot ends up turning out to the side, and then we end up getting this sort of walking pattern where we often resemble the duck foot position. So not only that, we often see some more circumduction happen through the leg. So instead of being a very linear, robotic, piston-like piece of machinery, we tend to introduce a lot more rotation into that system. And the reason why that's so important is because as soon as we start to create that rotation and we start to have to walk through that arch as opposed to walk through the foot, then we start to create this extra rotation through the entire system. And that can put the structures of the foot, the structures of the ankle, the structures of the knee, hip and low back under duress that they're not designed to handle. So something as simple as trying to consciously keep your feet straighter when you're standing and walking can start to normalize the way that we load up that tissue. So if you're someone that has bunions, if you have flat feet, if you have navicular problems, Achilles issues, plantar fasciitis, calf issues, shin splints, meniscal issues in your knee, long-term wear and tear or knee arthritis, iliotibial band issues, patellofemoral joint issues, problems with your hip impingement, for example, and even some lower back stuff. If the next time you go for a walk, if you can take a moment to look down and see where your feet are pointing, you might find that you're missing one of the most obvious signs that something isn't going right in terms of how you're loading things up. So if we're trying to correct this, and I would urge you to try this straight away because it's such a powerful exercise, we're going to do the couch stretch. So it's a stretch that we've done a lot on the channel before, but it is easily one of the best and fastest and most effective ways to free up the front of that hip. And what I would suggest you do is that if you can take your shoes off, just go for a walk for 30 seconds to a minute without trying to change anything, get a sense of how you feel when you walk, come back, do this couch stretch, and then go for another walk again. And hopefully you'll feel like it's easier to have that foot in a better position. So again, the way that we want to do this, all you need basically is a surface to go up against. You can definitely do it on a couch or a chair. It's going to be easier for you. But to show you in this position, essentially what we want to do is we want that knee right into the corner of the chair. So if you're on a chair, make sure that your knee is where the seat meets the back of the chair. If you're a little bit more advanced, do it on the floor up against a wall, knee up against the corner, foot and shin up against the post or the back of the chair. You want to make sure that your back stays nice and straight. We're not extending from your back. We're trying to extend from your hip as far up as you feel comfortable going. Now, if you haven't done this before, it's a brutal stretch. So you might find that you can only get to this point. That's completely fine. Start where you feel comfortable. And then as you start to free up through the front here, you'll feel you can eventually bring yourself up more sort of horizontal to the ground, more vertical in a sense. But we're looking for some tightness through the front of this hip. Now, you can shift your hips towards the side that you're stretching. You can shift your hips away from the side that you're stretching. It will change how much tension you have through the front of that hip. Ideally, we want to preach that sort of that linear sense. So we want to make sure that your foot is basically in the middle of your butt cheek. Everything's up nice and tall. You'll feel a really nice, brutal stretch to the front of that hip. You want to stay here for 30 seconds to a minute or whatever you feel comfortable tolerating. You've got to be able to breathe. You've got to be able to talk. If you can't, if you feel like you're holding on for dear life, this muscle isn't going to free up as quickly as possible. So come out of that stretch a little bit further to a point that you can tolerate. And again, once this tissue frees up, it's going to get easier to do. So again, deep breath in, give all these muscles a squeeze, squeeze your butt cheek, tense the muscles at the front of the thigh, push your foot back into the post or the chair, hold that for 5 to 10 seconds, then relax. You might find you can go a little bit further into the stretch than you could before. And once you've done that for a little bit, as I said, I would urge you to then start walking again. And what you should find is automatically, it should be easier to keep your foot straight, and you shouldn't feel like that foot has to turn around to get around that tightness. You should have a little bit more freedom at the front, and ultimately that'll help normalize how you're loading the leg. So it's really important to understand that if you do walk with your feet turned out, it can be a really strong sign that there's something dysfunctional happening at the front of your hip. And that's often something that gets missed because it's so far away that we often think that it's not connected. But as you can see, your legs one system, it's not a bunch of different things working in isolation. So if you do find that, then make sure that you're trying to address that tightness at the front of the hip. And then every time you're out walking from now on, try and consciously keep those feet straight. Even if you feel like when your feet are straight that it feels like they're actually turned in a lot further, that just means that you've found it and exposed some of that tightness at the front of the hip or in the rest of the hip as well. If it's been, if you forcefully had your feet turned out for a long time, you might find that it was perpetuated by the muscles at the front, but it may also now be that the muscles at the back are a little bit tight as well. So you might need to stretch those out, but for a starting point, please give the couch stretch a go. Consciously try and keep those feet a little bit straighter, and hopefully you'll see that some of those common aches and pains that you might have been struggling with start to drop off over time. But as always, if you found this useful, please leave a like on the video. Let me know in the comments below how you're going. Is it something that you found instantly helpful? And then obviously, if you find this content really useful and interesting, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's growing really well. It's getting to more people, which is the plan. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.